that one clip of the kid juggling the feet. That's good. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And nothing means anything, and everything's funny. My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film Mountainhead.
Kind of like Fountainhead, but only if your interior decorator was Anne Bland.
Wow. Yeah, that's fair. I was going to go with Motorhead, just because I wanted to do some metal, but I got derailed, and now I can't.
Okay. Well, welcome back. Have you been away?
No.
No?
Maybe.
I looked after your cat. I felt like we were away.
Maybe I was away. Did we bank one? Did we bank our Mission Impossible one early, and that's why it feels like we haven't done this in a minute?
We haven't done this in a minute. Hey, how's it going? We are back in the hot seat today.
Woo!
With and I've got to admit, I am extremely tired. New York City occasionally does this thing, which is that the teachers get the day off, which is great, wonderful for the teachers, but then I have to deal with kids today. So I've been running around like a headless chicken, following my son around and his friends and going to water parks and libraries and getting snacks and making sure everyone's looked after. And I know this sounds like the daily tasks of an average parent, but it was just a lot for me today because today is also an extremely hot day in New York City. We were outside for the most of it. And I decided to come over a little early today. And this is where we'll talk about the movie relationship to what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Because the three kids that I've been looking after today are now at my house watching The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, the extended edition.
Oh, of course. How could you not?
My son is watching The Lord of the Rings right now. I watched Fellowship with him. I watched part of Two Towers with him just now, but then I came over here to do this podcast. I flipped the disc just before I left, so there's another 2 hours left on that thing before I get back. So hopefully we will wrap this podcast up before we go back.
We'll finish it before the Ents are taking the hobbits to Isengard.
Oh, that's already all. The Ents have already got the hobbits, but they have not gone to Isengard.
They're not taking the hobbits to Isengard.
Yeah, there is still a long conversation with the Ents.
Here's how much I love Lord of the Rings extended editions. I bought the latest 4K set.
Yeah.
And I do not have a 4K screen to play them on.
I've done the same thing.
I am future-proofing. Actually, that's not true. The screen that my computer is running on is 4K, but it's tiny.
Yeah, sure. Why would you want to do that?
I need to get a 4K projector at some point in the future.
No, these tariffs, baby.
I know. Well, at least it's Alien versus Predator now, and it'll be real good.
Oh, in terms of what's happening right now
in the
world,
political spectrum.
In the political spectrum. Okay, and for everyone listening in, as we're recording this email, there's been hot breaking news about the breakup of the century. Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift have finally called it quits. No, we're talking about Donald J. Trump and Elon Musk have finally called it quits. And it's been running for like about an hour or so right now, but there is a real Mean Girls kind of vibe going on to Twitter at this moment. I know you're not on Twitter, but I kind of check in every now and again because I still run our Only Movie Podcast, Only Movie Pod Twitter page on occasion. So it is some hot, spicy moments in there. And that will relate to our discussion of Jesse Armstrong's film Mountainhead. Because
I think it actually will, which is odd.
As it was happening, I was like, well, our podcast episode just got more relevant.
Yeah. I honestly thought it was like a bit. Like I thought they were doing something just to maneuver.
I'm kind of halfway there, which is like it kind of feels like a bit.
The Epstein Files tweet is the line where I was like, oh.
I guess the only thing about that, and the whole thing, I don't care one way or the other. Not in terms of like. I just want
of cinema.
I just want off this roller coaster ride. Like I'm just tired of these people. Yeah. I just want off this.
Well, I think the characters of the movie Mountainhead are also people that I just want to get away from.
Yeah, exactly.
So it all checks out. But before that, Shahir, we will be going over emails from our lovely listeners in the Topam fam community.
100%. We have a bunch of emails here. Also, just wanted to shout out that we have been posting a bunch of content on both our YouTube and our Instagram page, and occasionally on Blue Sky as well. We've been producing a bunch of social content. So if you see those floating around in your feed, we're trying to do like one every day now. Please share them.
Go to search the only podcast about movies on YouTube and like and subscribe. It will actually help us there too. I know that's so stupid and I say it in my other day job.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is the more people, even if you don't plan to listen to us there, it actually does really, really help. And there are hundreds of us, Shahir, hundreds. And if those hundreds, if you find hundreds would go to to check that out and just you just subscribe to the channel and get the notifications and things.
Also, if you see one of our clips, share it.
Yeah,
share
it moves it.
And get angry about it.
Cher's been putting together some really good shorts. The Mission Impossible one, the first one did like 1.7K, which is a ton. So that's great.
We're out in the world.
Yeah, and we're going to be doing backlog uploads there too. Eventually, there will be a playlist of them in order, and you just be able to run them in the background if you want to go insane. But do it with us in a parasocial methodology kind of way, then that's going to be the direct line feed.
There was 530 something episodes.
Yeah.
Well, good. More power to you if you want to listen to all of those. No, and I like them.
I like most of them.
Muhammad writes in, hope you're doing well. It's been a very productive week in regards to watching movies. I took my mom to see Ridley Scott's, in my opinion, best historical epic, Kingdom of Heaven director's cut in the theaters. I also came across this exciting new director called Wong Kar-wai. I saw Chungking Express and In the Mood for Love. Chungking Express felt like a fever dream with its abstract storytelling, hallucinating camera work, and cinematography. Honestly, what can I say about In the Mood for Love that hasn't already been said before? Except that if my significant other looked like Maggie Cheung or Tony Leung, I cheated on them, I deserve a lifetime of loneliness. I don't think I've ever seen a more romantic film where the mood, vibes, and music just hit you like a tsunami. I adored these two films and can't wait to watch 2046. Wish you all the best. Muhammad, you're speaking my language. I love Wong Kar-wai. I taught a class on Wong Kar-wai in New Zealand. I own the box set now.
And I've heard Shahir mention that he taught a class about Wong Kar-wai.
Of course. Actually, if a thing you can do that would have been a primer for my class on Wong Kar-wai is go to YouTube and check out the music video. I believe it's called 6 Days. It was called 6 Days by DJ Shadow. It is directed by Wong Kar-wai, and it features a lot of the same thematic interests that Wong Kar-wai displays in movies. So likewise, you could also go to the BMW films and watch, I can't remember which film it was called, but Wong Kar-wai directed one of them with Clive Owen. So you can watch those as well. I find these fascinating because they're kind of like short insights into Wong Kar-wai's, ongoing concerns as a filmmaker. And you'll see a lot of like the same thematic ideas about time, about repeating loops, about the female body, about kisses, and all that sort of stuff, and the same kind of cinematography in those short projects as well.
I am going to be honest. I'm very glad that you're you, because you gave a very succinct place for people to go find actual information.
Yeah.
But I thought you were going to be like, if you need a primer on what I did for my class, you can go to the only podcast about movies on YouTube. I thought you were just going to swing it back.
No.
But you actually gave wonderful resources.
I actually love DJ Shadow, and it was amazing that Wong Kar-wai directed a music video. It's only 3 minutes, so check it out if you like it. But Chungking Express, I remember I watched that in college. Actually, I think I watched it just out of college, and it blew me away. I really love the sort of partner film to Chungking Express, which is Fallen Angels. It has one of my favorite GIFs of all time, which I use all the time whenever I can. I have fallen off a little bit of Wong Kar-wai since he did the Bruce Lee film, or the Bruce Lee's Masters film.
Right.
But I would happily revisit all of Wong Kar-wai's movies. As Tears goes, I did a thing, which is that every few years for a while, I would just rewatch all of them. And from memory, the last time I watched them, As Tears Go By was the one that really hit me the hardest. I think that's a really beautiful film. So, look, if you're just starting down the Wong Kar-wai path, there's a lot to learn here and a lot to love. And it's just such a fascinating filmmaker, because the famous story with In the Mood for Love is that they shot for close on 2 years. Someone could correct me about that if I'm wrong. And then basically the movie that we see was reshoots that were all done in the last 2 weeks of that 2 year period.
Oh, wow.
Extraordinary filmmaker, like one who really follows instincts.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, what film I actually rewatched was the English language film he did, My Blueberry Nights, which I was like, this is actually really good.
Yeah.
It got completely panned when it came out, but I love it. I love him. I love him as a filmmaker. Muhammad, thank you for indulging me to be able to talk about Wong Kar-wai for a second.
Thank you, Muhammad. We're going to jump to a different land, a distant land from emails for a moment. We're going to go to, I kid you not, a Spotify comment.
There's two of them.
There's 2 Spotify comments. I'm going to read the first Spotify comment. Top 10 episode. Vernal Salma, north of the border shout out.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
What is north of the border?
Maybe a Canada?
Maybe. Did we talk about Canada in that episode? I don't know.
Message us back again.
I honestly thought that was something that you'd said, and it might have been a video game or something. I was like, I don't know what this is.
It could be. Listen, I apologize, dear Spotify commenter. I don't know, but let us know so we can be like, I understood that reference. The other one just says, Nisha 2, Eleanor Zhang, 3157. Yes! Praise him more. Nisha, my baby, deserves love and praise. Agreed.
After that episode, I think I went to revise how I pronounce Nisha.
Oh,
Nuja.
We said that correct. We said it correctly because we were corrected on the podcast.
Yeah, we probably got it wrong a bunch of times, but anyway.
I just said it incorrectly because it's been weeks since we did that podcast.
Great movie, though. I think Nuja 2, Nuja will be on VOD very shortly.
I hope so. I'll watch that again.
Yeah, certainly. Do you want to take the next one?
Sure. This is from Kellen. Says, hi, Matt Shahir. Happy top 10 of the decade after 533 episodes of doing this crazy thing. At this point, I have to lean toward Infinity War for being the movie of the decade, only because we have yet to see what impact Flow will have. Hopefully we get a lot of I see what you did coming up. Hopefully we get a flood of animated and ostensibly silent films from other countries around the world that continue pushing this medium of storytelling forward over the next 7 years. Also, I loved hearing the first minute or so of episode 1 tacked onto the end because it contains the very first mentions of New Zealand and New Hampshire barely 60 seconds in. And as many longtime listeners know, it is far from the last time.
Might even come up this episode.
Yeah, congrats, and can't wait to hear what the next decade brings and the inevitable top 20 episode in 2035.
Wow. Can you imagine?
I mean, kinda.
Can you imagine us still doing this 10 years from now?
I feel like I can. I don't know.
This is also just, again, in reference to the fact that we asked the question, Flow versus Infinity War. Those were our top two. That was your pick and my pick of the top movies of the decade. And we wanted to hear what you thought about those two particular movies. I think so far, everyone has come in on Infinity War.
Not everyone. No, I could have sworn there was one or two flows.
There's one flow coming up. The first and only flow.
I'll read Jacob's real quick and then you can hit Ross's. Jacob writes, Infinity War, Avengers Infinity War. Sorry, Shahir. I do need to rewatch Flow. Yeah, I mean, Jacob, you should.
Ross writes us in. Now, Ross, thank you for writing us in. You did write about two different movies and we truncated this and we'll read out the second part of your email in another week from now. So thank you for bearing with us. But Ross, and I just wanted to, highlight this, but Ross says, Flow. Hey, Personally, I respected your review on Infinity War. I think he's talking to you. I wish that the end had hit me as hard. It just all seemed to be a little too on the nose for me. Oh, the new guys are all getting dusted. That doesn't seem random at all. That being said, I still love 99% of it and MCU and the MCU right in general. Now, a debate between Endgame and Flow might have turned out entirely different for me. I really think that Endgame was absolutely the movie of the decade, but I would also agree that 2019 was an absurdly strong year and would not have chosen that if I only had to pick one film from that year. I would 100% agree with Parasite as the choice for 2019, with Jojo Rabbit and Knives Are Out being my runners-up. It just so happens there were at least 4 movies of the decade that came out that year. Sorry, I forgot Shahir's choice, but I'm sure it was excellent. I need to add it to my list. Secondly, congrats, Matt, on your recent engagement. It's way too long since we've caught up in person, nearly 15 years, I believe. I really hope that our respective families can all connect in the near future. I would also love to meet Shahir, whom I consider part of your family at this point. Congrats also on your decade of being the only podcast about movies. Again, Ross, thank you. We will read out your Mission Impossible rankings next week.
Ross is an old college friend of mine. And he's out in the LA lands, I believe. He was working on, and Ross, please, if I get this wrong, email us back in. I believe he was a producer on Abbott Elementary.
Oh, cool. Great show.
So shout out to Ross doing work out there.
They're doing a bunch of crossovers with It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Abbott Elementary is. And I was like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah.
This is like a new thing. Yeah. Is it right? Like shows do shows always did crossover.
Shows always did crossover. I love it. I love a shared universe as brought to you by Infinity War. All right. Well, the shared universe that we're going into is starting to feel a little too real for my own comfort.
Yeah.
And that is the film Mountainhead, which the Internet Movie Database says is about the following. What the fuck? 4 friends reunite during worldwide economic turmoil.
Yeah, that's true.
No!
These aren't normal friends.
They're not friends.
They're Brewsters.
Listen, I'm saying...
Are they called the Brewsters, by the way?
Yes, I believe so. But I think I feel like this is leaving a lot on the table of what this film is. And I like the Internet Movie Database things. It doesn't tell you the plot of the movie, but tells you like what to expect from the plot.
Okay.
And this just is like a third of it.
Well, the reason I wanted to do this movie is that after I got back from Sundance, I bumped into a friend, another father in the town that we live in. And he mentioned that he was heading up to Sundance to shoot a movie, this particular movie. And so I was in Sundance not so long ago, and he was like, I'm leaving right now to go film this movie. And then it's only been about a month or two since then, and the movie is out. And when I heard it was Jesse Armstrong, I was excited, obviously, because Succession was such a huge hit. I only realized this recently, but Jesse Armstrong was also a writer on this fantastic film that I loved from years ago, Four Lions, which I have talked about on the podcast. I just don't know in which episode. It is a sort of almost similar in style comedy about four friends in London who happen to want to be terrorists and who are idiots. And it stars Riz Ahmed. It is an incendiary film. It is one that has a very peculiar sense of humor. Imagine The Office with terrorists.
Right.
And it is one that is actually quite surprisingly brutal at times, but with a comedic tint to it. It's a Chris Morris film, I believe. But so I love that movie. I love the experience of seeing that movie with a friend of mine back in the day, because it really spoke to our kind of collective sense of humor, which is like, you want things that are slightly dangerous and slightly like, in a way, yeah, incendiary, I think is the word I can kind of think of there. But it's a hard movie to recommend, particularly in the United States. The humor is very British.
Yeah.
And it's one where if this movie catches you at the wrong angle, and if you are particularly sensitive to the issues of terrorism and the way that this film depicts terrorism, and in fact, its main plot point in terms of the terrorist attack that the four men commit, which is played for a joke, eventually ended up being something that actually happened in a very similar way. So I can 100% see that film being a challenge to recommend. However, I do think it's really insightful in terms of the way it's actually put together. And it is a really good testament to Jesse Armstrong's writing and his sensibilities about the interdynamics of power, particularly in the face of like, I guess, a sort of commonplace exchange, like in the case of Succession, how does a billionaire CEO hand off the power reins of his company, and what sort of infighting does it do? And in this case, Mountainhead, how do four billionaire friends spend their time together as the world is crumbling, probably as a consequence of their own actions? I also wanted to say this: I like his sense of humor and his sense of writing, because it only occurred to me as we said it that the reference to Brewster's is probably a reference to the film Brewster's Millions.
Yes.
Which if anyone hasn't seen, Brewster's Millions would probably be a really fun watch right now. It's a movie. It's a remake. There are two versions of it. Richard Pryor becomes the inheritor of a vast fortune.
Yeah.
But the game is, he has 30 days to spend $30 million, at the end of which he can have no assets and he cannot give the money away. And if he does that, he will inherit $300 million. It's sort of like this game on like, I want you to hate smoking by making you smoke a pack of cigarettes every day. I love that. So yeah, a lot to talk about here.
I have not. I've started watching Succession, but I have not gotten far.
Okay.
For no reason of the show, it's just we were actually watching it with Chelsea and Tash, and then basically we wanted to make sure we only watched it together. We had like a weekly watch, but then it just sort of fell off.
Yeah.
But this was a film once I heard about its rough premise, I was very, very excited to dive into, because oftentimes if you live on the internet like I do, both professionally and personally, it starts to feel like the world runs like this. And it's a real... a lot of the things that are going, in my opinion, wrong with the way the world is run, or the way that we get information about the world, makes it seem as though the characters, the real life people that these characters are sort of parodies of, are actually like truly like super smart, sometimes evil, like godlike figures. And when I watched this, it was a real reminder. It moved my fear from a different perspective of like, oh, well, probably not, though. They're probably just dudes who drank enough of their own Kool-Aid, got high on their own supply, and got real lucky because they were good at stuff. And it's really a terrifying look at power dynamics of places that you don't expect there to need to be power dynamics. The way that no matter how high you get on the financial ladder, there's always going to be interpersonal problems with your, and I'll use this term lightly, friend group or peer group. In this particular film, a couple different characters do a couple different things, right? Like Steve Carell's Randall's sort of the elder technocrat.
The Peter Thiel kind of analog.
Jason Schwartzman's is a super who is basically the lowest of them by, I think he's not quite a billionaire yet.
And I when they first called him super or Soups, I thought they were referring to him as Superman.
Yeah, that's
and it was only until later on when we realized that it's a reference to Soup Kitchen.
Yep.
Because he is by a magnitude, a fairly significant amount poorer than the other, although extraordinarily rich.
Yeah, Rami Youssef plays Jeff, who is the kind of star on the rise based on a particular type of AI his company has designed that can solve a lot of problems that are happening throughout the film.
He seems like a Sam Altman type figure.
And then Corey Michael Smith, who I absolutely love, is Venice. And I've loved him since he was Riddler on Gotham.
I did not. I think this is the first time I've seen him. And this is kind of the Elon Musk role.
I gotta say, or you could go with Zuck.
Sure.
Or a combo of both.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, he was the one that kind of stole the show for me. I thought his performance was so like, a lot of these people seem like they don't human well.
Mm-hmm.
They do colloquial, sort of like bro-esque culture at a certain point, because that's what they've seen people do on YouTube and on the internet. When you're popular, that's sort of how you talk. Mm-hmm. And there are multiple times in this movie where Venice just doesn't know how to human. Mm-hmm. All of them kind of do the same thing, and it's another. It rang a different, I guess, chime in the Death of Stalin-esque kind of comedy of errors in a terrifying nightmare world where these men are kind of in charge. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I enjoyed this movie more than I thought I would. You said you watched it twice.
I did watch it twice, yeah.
And you said you gleaned more upon a second viewing.
Yeah, I think my first viewing of it really came down to a couple things. One is that the first time around, again, Jesse Armstrong is a fantastic writer. The famous thing I think about his screenplays, particularly around Succession, is they're incredibly fat because there's just so much rat-a-tat dialogue going on, often between multiple characters.
They're fast.
Who are all making, references upon references, layers upon layer, and who are all sort of speaking in their own, tonal languages really well. And so, it's a lot of, the film is filled with that sort of thing. You alluded to Armando Iannucci as well. It's kind of working in the same ballpark as that. But the first time around, I think my feeling about the film was that truth is stranger than fiction. And the truth that we live in right now with Elon Musk at the helm of Doge and, the breakup that's going on with Donald J. Trump as we speak at this moment. These were things that kind of felt a little bit more sillier than what the film posited. And in a way, then therefore made the film feel unrealistic because the world that we live in seems a little bit stranger than what the world that these people live in. Like I think about Zuckerberg and jujitsu and, like his chains and all that sort of stuff. And I think about
real masculine energy on the internet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The sort of infighting between Elon Musk and Sam Altman seems sort of timid compared to, seems a little bit wilder on the internet compared to this. So I kind of felt that way. I think the second time around was actually an opportunity to kind of like, in a way, watch the movie in slow-mo and really pick up on all the details that are going on here. And I think the thing that really caught my attention the second time around is the lack of external reference points that the characters need in order to become deluded. And it happens right at the very beginning of the movie. The very beginning of the movie is Venice basically saying he's going to launch this new AI into the world, basically a set of image generating tools from his site Tram, I think it's called, that will revolutionize the world. And he does it by typing in the word fuck, with 2 U's. And then the person behind him was like, oh, that's hilarious. You know what? You should do it 3 U's. That'd be funny. He's like, no, I prefer 2 U's. Yeah, you're right. 2 U's better. 2 U's is genius.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, these are, it happens right away. And there's a lack of necessity for external validation for these characters because they've exceeded so far beyond the spectrum of what is accountable in this world. Like the president calls them and he's like, yo, what's up? That when, I think this is the sort of the most striking thing here, is that when the water turns off in their house in Mountainhead, they presume that means that there is an attack on them going on with no external validation whatsoever, no reference points. These guys are permanently stuck to their phones. And it's interesting the second time around to watch how that delusion spreads itself towards the back half of the second half of the movie. And the second half of the movie takes a kind of almost Stanley Kubrick in Full Metal Jacket kind of tone, where these bumbling idiots then proceed to try and plot a murder, both with a sort of keen understanding that the murder may be necessary to save humanity in their own words, and also that they have methodologies to, remove accountability from what they're about to do.
But they also don't have the actual physical skills to do any of it.
They of course not. No, they are idiots in the sort of classic Succession, Armando Iannucci kind of way, which is that these are men who have really risen to the top of their field through their intellect, or at least through the roll of the dice alongside their belief in their intellect.
And some charisma and a couple of things.
Yeah. And it is striking how well that actual depiction, the way the mechanics of the film set up, really work a second time around, particularly around Randall. It's no spoiler. The first thing seen here is like Randall has a cancer that he believes will only last 10 to 15, will give him 10 to 15 years, although he is entirely deluded, like Venice in the back of his car, that is possible given how much wealth and how much he has accumulated, how much access he has. You see, he's, in his words, to fix this piece of gristle.
It becomes, I got echoes, and I don't know the story terribly closely, but it got echoes of Jobs there, right? Because it just felt like, and the way that Randall handles it here, he tells the doctor that the doctor is stupid.
Yeah, the doctor must be
an idiot. And there has to be a solution, and then he leaves the doctor on the tarmac. So you have all these conflicting sort of wants and needs from these characters. Steve Carell's Randall wants to work with Venice because Venice has been working on uploading consciousness, and Venice then plays him. Then Venice basically plays him and says that since we want him to get Jeff to sell him or let him use his AI moderation tool to basically save Tram after he's released this thing with no guardrails.
Yeah.
And Soup is doing a meditation app that he just wants them all to buy into.
He wants them to drop a biz nut.
And a biz chunk? No, a B.
A B chunk.
A B nut.
A B nut. B nut.
It's a bill. $1 billion.
Yeah.
And the way that it's something, I'm going to back up a little bit. Something that I always love in films like this, especially well-written ones like Mountainhead is the very human operandi of no matter where you go, no matter what your social status is, no matter what your friend group, no matter what business you are in, human beings, it feels like, on average, will always, when you get around someone that is truly in a peer group, that's when you start getting like, people stop being polite and start getting real. Like, for instance, we go back to him, Steve Carell talking to the doctor. He brushes him off. He has all power over him. He doesn't have to do anything.
And this doctor is a replacement for the previous doctor.
Yeah. You go back to Venice doing the tweet of fuck, right?
Yeah.
Like that is, and the sniveling yes people all around him.
Yeah.
you get that thing of like, these are men who that are not normally challenged because they're not around people in their socioeconomic bracket other than going to a retreat and a poker night in a mountaintop villa. And when they are together, they just devolve into kind of the rest of us. They devolve into what is essentially, rousing with your boys or proverbial dick measuring contests or like weird. I don't know if you have this with any of your friends here, but like weird sort of like ritual things. Like they went to the top of the mountain, they like draw their value on their chest, and then they yell out over the mountain something that they want. And I don't have something that sort of deep, but like what I do have with a lot of my college friends is a lot of tradition and reference. So like if we'll go on trips and do things, but we'll always make sure to do like X, Y, and Z. And so that always like, it had a sense of, whether it is through history or circumstance that these men are all in, they are all close, but not, they might have started close. Maybe they actually liked each other, but now they're close because they don't have anyone else that they can relate to. It felt like that's why they come here. That's why they do this retreat. Of course it devolves, and of course it turns into
murder
house. But I really, really like seeing that sort of portrayed at what would be the highest monetary level. I think about this a lot about billionaires. They're never alone. Like, not truly. There's always someone around. So what happens when you take these people that are not used to that because they are being taken care of at their beck and call, and you send every service staff home because you and your billionaire boys are going to have a poker night.
Right.
You devolve into what is essentially children that don't know anything. They can't read off their phone.
Right.
And it's
and
just,
there's no one checking them to say, hey, though the world is ending, you guys aren't in the central power position or shouldn't be in the central power position to try and take this over.
Yeah. So the thing we've kind of left on the table at this point, and we'll start getting into more and more spoilers as we go, but as they get there, the Tram app with its new generative AI image, like video generation tools, are basically being used en masse through different governments and peoples and organizations across the world to spread disinformation at a global scale, causing real life wars and riots because they can just generate any image. The quote I did about the juggling feet. Yeah. It starts like, oh yeah, that's funny. Someone did a thing. And then they realized, no, that could be real feet.
Yeah. Those are
like
feet.
in a riot or people being butchered in streets.
Yeah.
And the Globe, as they're in this mountaintop villa I'm guessing in and around, not Aspen, but Colorado somewhere.
It's at Sundance. Is where they actually, they make reference to that. Yeah.
So that is going on in the background, and they're slowly kind of, especially Venice is trying to like talk his way through, like, no, it's fine. Like his belief structure is a fascinating and incredibly broken one, which is you just push through it. Yeah. He thinks that, like, I think he says something along the lines of some Palestinian kid and some Israeli kid are going to like see this dumbass thing with the monkey, and they're both going to laugh and be like, why are we fighting? Yeah. And it's like, that's such a man-child way of seeing the world. Yeah. Thinking that your thing is more important than thousands of years of history and conflict.
It's like Jared Kushner solving the Middle East crisis.
Yeah, he did, right? Yeah. I think it's fixed. So I don't know. I think as this film progresses and you're starting to see glimpses of this world that is burning, I was curious how far it would go into, like, would this turn into, again, another farcical film that is much more farcical than this, End of the World? Yeah. I was like, is it going to turn into, like, it starts as a party and then the world truly ends around them? Yeah. It does not. But their own personal world, I feel, kind of does and changes in the sense that, and now we'll get into sort of heavier spoilers, because Jeff won't sell Venice his AI moderation tools, he plays Randall and Soup to be around, well, to save humanity. Like, we need this to save humanity because it's like so convoluted. Yeah. Venice tells Randall that he can't get people to upload consciousnesses in 10 to 15 years if he doesn't have the AI that Jeff has.
Yeah.
Jeff refuses. Therefore, they decide that they need to murder Jeff because they potentially, this could save billions of people, because if you can get people uploaded to consciousnesses, that'll save so many people because of reasons.
Yeah.
And it's that sort of like Silicon Valley, like 9 steps ahead when you haven't thought of the first 8 steps, thinking that this just embodies, and that's why they attempt very poorly to murder Jeff.
Yeah.
It goes wrong. Yeah. There's a distinct lack of physicality that felt very real here.
Yeah. The person I kind of think about a lot here is Kara Swisher, who is the author and podcaster who wrote a book called Burn Book. She's been reporting on Tech Journal on Silicon Valley for a long time and has talked to a lot of these people, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Mark Andreessen is the other one that she sort of talks about a lot. She was recently on the Ezra Klein podcast and I was listening to her talk about it. And, she said this sort of funny thing, which is that the sort of posturization of masculinity in this group of men is so ridiculous, because she was, in her words, she was like, Mark Andreessen looks like he's never run a mile in his life and is talking about masculinity in a way that like suggests that he thinks he could. And I think that that sort of de-evolution of these guys from both their intellectual self and their philosophical self, the ideas that they have, the sort of fountainhead of it all, the Ayn Rand of this all sort of like this entire exercise, when it actually comes, push comes to shove of like, we have to physically overpower a human being. There's a sort of big gap there. And it's because that gap has essentially been filled by wealth. And you see it right at the beginning of the film, which is that you're sort of looking at these guys making these long trips to Colorado, right? And this happened in succession a lot too, by the way. You're acknowledging the fact, you sort of have to watch it and acknowledge the fact that nobody has ever thought about their luggage. When they need to go out in the snow, there is an outfit that has been, set aside for them both. Every part of the menu, the picking fish has been like already planned. There is no want that they have that has not been preconceived for them. So therefore, and I think the theory there is that therefore their intellectual selves can thrive because they don't have to worry about their physical selves as much. But what is interesting about that is that also divorces them from their ability to empathize with like ordinary everyday struggles. Like famously, I think I read recently about Uber coming up with a big plan for ride sharing in large vans. And essentially, like commentators on the internet really pointed out, so you guys are talking about buses.
Yeah, you invented the bus, you dumb fucks.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's that sort of Silicon Valley speak of how to, as you're saying, sort of like think 10 steps ahead and think of yourself as genius when you haven't really thought about what the first 5 steps are. And in this, Soups is trying to sort of get a meditation app that will help you think about like your posture as well as your diet and maybe a new color for the app itself.
The lifestyle app.
It is a lifestyle app. I think this all works really well and it is rapid fire. I wondered about, and again, the thing that I think I really responded to in terms of Armstrong making this film is the idea that filmmakers, particularly now in the technological age that we live in, have the ability to respond to a political situation that is happening in front of us immediately.
Pretty damn quick.
Like I said, I bumped into my buddy, just a couple of months ago, and all of a sudden, and now the movie is out. And this is a movie that is short. It plays like a theater production, but it is responding to the world as we see it. And we've talked about this on the podcast as well. Is that even on this episode, it does feel like we are in a clown car. And I want to get off of it. And these people are not clown conductors, but clown roadshow. What's a head clown? Well, these are the head clowns.
The head clowns.
The head clowns.
It's interesting because history is littered with head clowns.
Yeah.
Then honestly, things like the French Revolution happen.
Yeah.
Like it's this is not the first time idiots have become in charge, and
Death of Stalin is a really good example. Yeah,
and it will not be the last.
Yeah.
It's because, I mean, we could get into it a little more, but like I truly believe the main problem with sort of having people in power based on wealth. There's a lot of things. One, I believe wealth at this level that all of these characters are at is an actual mental illness.
Well, like, Venice is the richest man in the world.
Yeah,
yeah.
It is a mental illness to have that much wealth and hoard it like a dragon around different things with all the myriad of problems the earth has.
Right.
So when thinking about characters such as these in these spaces, it is, how do I put it? It's I'm glad that in a commercial piece of media on HBO, that the feeling that we are all feeling with these technocrats sort of around doing kind of whatever they want now outside of the EU. Shout out to the EU for actually doing some real work, and it's not perfect, but the protections that citizens have in the European Union from predatory practices from tech is bar none way better than the United States. Yeah. But it's great to see a film that addresses these things as quickly as it has become more prominent in the light of most people's lives. I would say pre-Elon buying Twitter, I feel like the tech bros, sometimes people poke fun at Zuck, but like it was not a prominent thing there where people would just be going and making a film about them. It's become like life, as you sort of said, is farcical on its own, and now we're having references to that farce. I will say this. One thing that didn't connect with me, because I felt like it felt rushed. I felt like the real true story here was like these men who have no idea how to physically murder someone trying to idea cloud their way into murdering someone. The government takeovers that they try to do, they had like their conference room and they were talking to various countries to do coups.
Yeah, and then there's a question that they go, well, maybe we should coup up the United States.
Yeah, but then they decide that ultimately that's a bad idea because that's how their money works, which again I thought was very smart, because I don't want to get too much into politics, but the crypto nonsense trying to sort of, I won't get into my theories on what's going on there because it's not the time or the place, but having that be referenced is also very smart and timely. But they make a joke of it and they send Soup in to be like the person to lead these countries. Mm-hmm. But I don't think the film did enough of and maybe they did this upon the second time, did enough to sort of set up how that actually functions. Like everything else felt real enough in this movie. And when they started doing that, I was like, what?
Yeah. And so it's interesting, again, watching the movie a second time around, kind of like in slow motion, how quickly the delusions kind of like take hold. And I think what worked, I agreed with you in the first time I watched it, I felt that way as well. I was like, wait, what is happening here? But the second time I watched it with a sort of clearer eye as to where it was going to head and what they were actually doing, the sense that like, I think Jeff says, I've seen a couple of text messages and the government of Argentina is waiting for you in the other room, is a sort of demonstration of how accelerated their access to the world is and how quickly they can assemble a group of people in order to change things. And like
Steve Carell brownouts part of Europe.
Yeah, I think. He talks about it at some point.
No, he does it.
Oh, right.
He hits the button.
Yeah,
we never see it, but he does it.
And I think that sort of speaks to this idea that we've seen with, I guess, Doge in some way recently as well, which is the move fast, break things, and see what gets repaired in the process. It is the sort of Silicon Valley mentality, which is that you've got to move as quickly as possible in order to affect change as quickly as possible. And it really is based on this idea. I think Andreessen is the guy who coined, I'm reading about it, the 2023 essay, the Techno-Optimist Manifesto, which is this idea that technology is the governing catalyst which affects wealth, happiness, and change in the world. And it is, of course, self-fulfilling because then it then centers the evolution of the species around Silicon Valley and techno capitalists. And look, as much as I have a sort of disdain for the lack of empathetic knowledge that someone like Andreessen demonstrates, as I've listened to him in interviews, it's hard to argue that technology doesn't drive a lot of economic change in the world right now. And
technology has always driven economic change across.
And political change as well.
Yeah,
right
but
now.
It always, like, literally down to agricultural techniques or
the printing press.
The printing press, the motor car, like all this stuff has done that.
Yeah.
The thing that I think that they forget often, and this is why I can't take any of it seriously, is it's cyclical. Like, technology does drive things forward, but then what people do with that technology, which is often not what its creators plan, is the true driving force, because it's the tool, and then humanity as a whole, depending on how it feels and what it does with that thing, is the actual driving force. Now we're getting into sections of how do you control that.
You're taking the Ian Malcolm view of the world, which is that life finds a way.
I mean, kind of. Yeah. Like they're not wrong in, like, oh yes, this sparks change.
Yeah.
But I think that they think about is that spark and not the fire that then light gets lit, and how that is the actual thing that does shape the world. And as we all know, kind of with fire, it's very difficult to control.
And the reason why they don't think that I believe that they don't think about the way that fire spreads and how many people will die in the process is that they have basically moted and walled themselves off from consequence and accountability because of their wealth. So the accumulation of their wealth has allowed them to basically ward off the accountability problem that happens in this.
And the delusion that they're doing it for humanity's greater good.
Yeah, and that their wealth kind of protects them from the sort of breaking of humanity in the process.
They turn off electricity for a couple countries at a whim because they think it will help their case in throwing coups places.
Yeah.
And you have to think about the amount of, honestly, loss, death, destruction that can happen in those things in extended periods of time, but they don't because they're insulated from it.
A great example is the entire shutting down of USAID.
Yeah.
You know, like without a single thought for the consequence of what that will do. Even if you philosophically disagree with the idea of the United States spending money for foreign aid, which why would you think that? I'm saying that with a big sarcastic face here. The idea of, breaking that system as quickly as possible without consequence for, the people that will die. I think, Bill Gates said it best. There is no denying the imagery here of third world countries being starved by the world's richest man. And the world's richest man has no conception of like what his actions have done. The other side of this that I think, apart from the sort of techno fetishistic philosophizing that's going on here as well, is that the lack of femininity in the room.
Yeah.
These people are insufferable.
Yeah.
And I can understand like the inability to watch these men be this douchey, because it is a real guy thing in this room. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for guy retreats and all that sort of stuff. But
you're not about overthrowing governments as you do so.
Of course not. And there's a sort of absurdity to this because these are essentially all four man children, that have amassed an enormous amount of wealth.
They're philosophers and warrior poets. And it's okay.
Yeah, the Dead Poet Society of techno-capitalism. And it is insufferable to watch them. Now, again, as I said, the first time around when I watched the film, I really did think the movie was a little too abstracted from real life, given that how silly real life is right now. How absurd it is to watch a Mean Girls fight between Donald J. Trump and Elon Musk. But the second time around, I think I was more struck with how precise the writing is here. Like how much the writing is building upon certain ideas that Armstrong is kind of threading between 4 different characters who have, very different outlooks. I think ultimately, there's a sort of hint of this in the film, but I thought about the Renoir film, The Rules of the Game, where there's a sort of a mansion which is being run by these very wealthy people, and then there is a sort of sub-layer to it of like servants who are all supporting the house. And there's a couple of moments in this movie. Robert Altman's film Gosford Park kind of touches on this as well. There's a couple of moments where we see like people who are working the house kind of looking at their phones in kind of disgust at what's going on in the world. And I wondered about the capacity for the outside world to kind of penetrate these guys a little bit and like bring things in to the conversation. But also, I know that's a very difficult thing to do and probably outside the parameters of what they had in order to make this film work on this kind of a speed, which is like, we can get these 4 actors, we can get them for this time, let's go make this movie now as quickly as we possibly can. And, introducing more characters to it that way sort of, probably messes up the soup a little bit. But by the end of it, when it does come to a conclusion, we see Jeff and Venice, ultimately they are incapable of killing Jeff. There are sort of odd Holocaust illusions as they try to burn him alive at one point. They put gas into the sauna where he is hiding, and then threaten to set it alight. And then they realize that they possibly don't have the stomach for this, and Soups is unsure if he could live in this house again if he'd ever saw that, or how is he going to take a sauna again if he saw what happens in there. So an army of lawyers suddenly appear.
Well, he makes a deal, right? Yeah. Like Jeff is in there and he's like, why don't we go through this? Because the entire time the murder is being planned and they attempt it, they talk about it like it is a contract negotiation, but like with bullshit philosophy mixed in with it.
Yeah.
And the solution to their self-made problem of trying to murder their air quote friend is to do a hostile deal where he is basically, they're threatening to kill him to get him to sell their AI and whatever. And they even call it out in it. Like, well, if we do this, then he's just going to say it was under duress. Yeah. And then once it's all over, there's a really odd, I thought the ending of this movie is uncomfortable. It's not done unelegantly. However, it is unelegant by design. And by that, I mean, at the end, after the lawyers have done it and after Jeff showers and whatever, he kind of sits down at breakfast or walks into the other 3 having breakfast the next day.
Yeah.
And he tries in that moment to still act a little broy, and they're doing a real Mean Girls brush off thing. Like they don't even think about what they've done in that way. They just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think the thing that is tricky for me watching that, or I think in general, is that Jeff is the only person of color in the room.
Yeah,
and so it is like, to be fair, as you're watching it, and I think it's fair to say this because Rami Youssef has sort of built his career around the comedy of being a minority in America. The sort of sense of like what it means to be a minority in that room kind of comes to play, which is that 3 white guys just tried to kill him, just tried to murder who they thought were their friends.
Yeah.
And the thing that's uncomfortable about it, he's like, we're still friends, right? Like we're still bros, right? Like I just came here, you're my Brewsters. And I think that's a little uncomfortable to watch, although, I'm not certainly suggesting that it's not within the realm of plausibility as Jeff tries to maneuver his way out of the scenario. I couldn't quite foresee a world in my specific frame of view where I would go back into that room and or try to renegotiate a deal, because what happens then is Jeff and Venice then renegotiate the deal. I think sort of cutting out
Randall.
Cutting out Randall and Soup's part.
They don't even mention Soup. It's not even a thing.
It's not even a thing.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, the thing there is, when he does it, when Venice goes and confronts Jeff at the end, because I think Venice, I'm trying to remember why Venice goes outside. I think they might all be leaving at the same time and they have a conversation. This is what got me about the end of the movie that I didn't think quite worked. The tone of Jeff changed, like almost on a dime,
because he's willing to get rid of the other 2 people right away as well.
I'm sure it's not the drive or the want. Yeah. It's why it felt like two different characters. One that came to the breakfast table, and then one that was at the car who was like, "Oh, by the way, I'm just gonna say it was under duress and fuck all that. All that shit's not going." Like, but if you want to make a deal, like he goes from a hurt puppy to fucking blood shark, like very quickly, and I found that turn odd because there was never. It's funny with characters like this, it's hard to find what they're actually feeling. Yeah. And I was hoping that at the end of the film, we would get that a little more. And I don't think we do.
There's a couple of hints at it. Again, Jeff seems to be the one guy with a conscience about things that are happening around the world.
Well, not
in so much as he is at least seemingly aware of the consequences of their actions.
He is, but he's using it to broker a better deal for himself.
He also sees something in the world. He's like, look, I get it. The world is a big buffet, all you can eat buffet, and you got to get in there. And you build a great tool and you just let the AI do the work and then, collect money, and there's so much money to be made on this. So I wonder if like my frame of reference would be, I'm never going back into that room and these are not my friends kind of thing. Or this is, in terms of the way I would look at that, are different to someone who has accumulated what is the third richest amount of wealth in that room, and as you say, might be a disease of the mind, which makes that form of relationship building sort of like less personal and more like, well, okay, what is the transaction that I can get out of this? Yes, you guys tried to murder me, but maybe we can actually make this work.
So I agree with everything you've said. My issue is a little bit sidestepped of that, and that is, I can see both ends of the character, both breakfast Jeff and in the car Jeff. I can see the path of that character ending in either of those two ways. Yeah. It felt very weird that it ended in both of those ways.
Yeah, I can see that.
Again, it's my one like complaint about the end of what was otherwise honestly a very enjoyable, funny, dark, I won't say eye-opening, but like reminding film.
Yeah, it's sort of hard because you sort of wonder about, a friend of the show, listener Jonathan Blade, kind of mentioned that this felt like a more theatrical version of Don't Look Up. I
can see that.
Yeah. And I thought that was actually a really great observation in terms of understanding how this movie plays, which is that there is sort of like a degree to which like a film like Don't Look Up wants to pontificate about the impending dangers of climate change and our government's inability to deal with them, right? And then a film like this wants to do sort of a similar thing, which is like, this is the technocratic clown car that we all live in right now, and therefore we must kind of like resist or something like that. But it doesn't actually do that because Armstrong's not that kind of writer.
Right.
And what it does end up being and feeling like, and I kind of felt like this as I watched it, was that this feels like a really good side episode to Succession. Like these are characters that could appear in Succession in small part, and that this was like a one-off side quest that we saw in that show. Like
it's El Camino.
Yeah, it's the El Camino
from Breaking Bad.
Yeah, the El Camino to Succession of the El Camino of Breaking Bad is the Mountainhead to Succession kind of pathway, which is that it tells a really fascinating story. It is outside of the realm of that, but it feels like a very good contained episode.
Yeah.
Whether it kind of sparks more than that, I don't think it does. It's like I don't think anyone watches this, goes into this going, wow, the clown car is much worse than I thought, or we must do something about the clown car. I think it's just sort of I think everyone's on board already. And that's fine because that's what's interesting about it. There's not as much of the human dynamics of Succession, but Succession worked over 4 seasons, and basically built into its framework attack on capital, or sort of interrogation of capitalism, a story of King Lear with like all the infighting and squabbling that we kind of appreciate and love. In this, I think it might have been fun to see Jeff go back to the airport and meet his doctor again, as he flies out and realizes that
not Jeff,
Randall. Yeah. But I still certainly am in appreciation in an odd way of the work fast and see what breaks kind of approach that the filmmaking is kind of taking here, which is like this movie came together very, very quickly.
It's great.
And I think there's a sense of urgency to it as well. So the story is not giving me the urgency, but the actual fact that this production came together so quickly and is relating to things that are going on in our like real world right now. I don't know if there's another film that's talking about generative AI as sort of like as immediately as this film is.
Oh, Dead Reckoning or The Final Reckoning.
Yeah,
I'm kidding. It was a joke.
Yeah. They're dealing with Cyberdyne or Skynet. But yeah, I appreciate the sort of haste and urgency which compelled this film to get made. I don't know if it kind of wins everyone over in that way, but Jesse Armstrong is a great writer. He's a great director, and it is a really succinct, well put together, well conceived chamber piece about the sort of the limits and idiocracy of the techno optimist manifesto, or like the idiocracy that we live in right now. And again, we are writing this on the eve of when I will go back right now to check on what Elon Musk has tweeted about Donald J. Trump.
I'm sure
it's like,
it's great.
What nonsense. What I cannot stress this enough. I am so sick of these people.
Yeah.
I'm so sick of all of these people. That was the thing about the election that really hurt the most. It was like after 2020, it was like, oh, we don't have to.
It was like 2 years.
Yeah. I was like, we don't have to listen to this moronic drivel, again. And now every day to wake up and be like, what moronic drivel are we listening to today?
Yeah.
And if you like that, you might like our podcast.
Yeah, maybe. Well, this has been the only podcast about the film Mountainhead. Shahir, when you are not designing your meditative super app, where can folks find you?
My posture aligning super app called Bitterback is available on my website, www.suvanova.com. There's too many W's in there. SUVANOVA. Also follow me on Letterboxd, Shahir D, SHAHIRD. That's kind of where I like Letterboxd. It's like
I'm glad you like Letterboxd.
We just talked about movies. We just talk about movies. That's all we do.
That's great.
Matt, when you are designing your hilltop retreat from which you will find your own panic room against the end of the world, where can people find you?
You can find me digging with my own shovel because I can't afford any other way at some active volcano over at my website, Extra History or Extra Credits on the YouTube machines. I believe by the time this comes out, we will have released our Ibn Battuta Extra History Complete came out this week. Okay. Ibn Battuta World Traveler. God, that's a series I love so much. And we've done some extra stuff and some extra context and some work with it. It was really one of the first extra history stories when I came on to Extra History that like I connected with instantly. It's a fascinating story. He lived an insane life. And I urge you to please check that out if you haven't already. Next week.
No, this was odd. I'm a little confused. So maybe you can write us in. I knew Dan Trachtenberg had a new Predator movie coming out. I had thought it was a live action movie because I felt like, and this might be like a Streisand effect, I felt like I saw a live action trailer.
There is another film that is live action that is in the Predator universe. I forget what it is called.
I thought it was this.
Right.
And so I said, hey, and we both loved Prey so much, and it is available on Hulu this weekend. And I thought, oh, well, that'll be a fun one for us to do. But this is an animated film that is still directed by Dan Trachtenberg, and I think
still has good reviews.
And it still has great reviews. So
here's my question.
I was a little confused myself.
Here's my question. Yeah. Listeners, email us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com and let us know if you'd like us to do Killer of Killers, which is the name of the animated Prey sequel or Prey-verse Predator movie. Or, you know what else is coming out tomorrow, Shahir?
What's that?
Ballerina.
Oh, I haven't seen John Wick 4.
You must have seen
Have I seen John Wick 3?
You have seen John Wick. Have you not seen John Wick 4?
No, I've not seen John Wick 4.
Did we not do the podcast on John?
We did not do the podcast on John Wick 4.
Yes, we did.
No, we did not. Well, I didn't do it.
Oh, now I'm confused.
I don't think we did it. But if you're writing us in, you're gonna have to write in immediately because we have to make that choice within a day or two of this episode. Yeah. Of you hearing this episode.
Admittedly, I didn't plan that far ahead. I am the autocrat technic nonsense.
Yeah, break it fast. That sort of thing. Yeah, Ballerina, I heard is fine.
We didn't do John Wick 4.
No, we didn't. Yeah. And I've not seen it. So
you want to borrow it?
I'm very politely backing out of the door right now.
No, here.
I was like,
it's only
sure. I'll take
2 hours and 45 minutes of straight violence.
Let's see how we'll do.
I really like John Wick 4. Anyway, but you know what's interesting, Shahir? Guess what?
What?
Guess what?
What?
Ballerina takes place between John Wick 3 and 4. So you would actually be doing it canonically.
Okay.
His face. I know this is an audio medium. His face just looked like he's screaming on the inside.
Wait, you're telling me let's do, because both of these films are technically sequels to films that we've previously done on the podcast,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And one we both loved, and one I think I described as unending, but
this one has Ana de Armas in it,
and I think I described it as deadening.
Ballerina.
So we could do something that's deadening.
You don't know that. This is Ballerina in the world of John Wick.
Or something that is a sequel to something that we both actually really like.
Shahir, she fights a flamethrower with a fire hose.
Great.
I'm just throwing that out there.
What are some ballerina terms? It's like the pirouette, what's the first position called?
Oh, I don't know.
I mean,
but we're going to find out maybe.
Maybe.
All right. Anyway.
All right.
We'll talk at you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.